Hey bakers, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Our Bake On, where I'm teaching you guys my favorite things to cook. So on TikTok, there was a huge craze of ice cream bread. Well, I just happen to have a sponsorship with an amazing ice cream company called Atomic Ice Creamery. This is them right here. They are phenomenal. They are a nitrogen-based ice cream company, and everything is small batch. And let me just tell you, the flavors that they are introducing to the world, beyond epic. You need to check them out. So I want to show you how to turn their ice cream into the most epic and delicious bread possible. But there's tricks to it. Not every ice cream is going to be the same recipe. So Bailey, how do I know what to do? I'll show you. Follow along. We're going to do two kinds. We're going to do apple pie a la mode, and we're going to do Graham Hatton. It's right here. That is Moulis. It's one of their dairy-free ice creams. So I'm going to show you how to make a dairy-free and a dairy ice cream. And we're going to tweak them a little bit. We're going to make them delicious, but I'm going to show you how two very different ice creams can be made and how to figure out what ingredients or the amount of ingredients that you need for them. So first off, you need your ice cream. So my ice cream, this is my apple pie a la mode, is still getting melty. But I wanted to taste it in front of you guys so you saw how amazing it is. And that way we can discuss the flavors. Okay, apple pie a la mode. Oh, shut up. So it's appley, caramely. You get that buttery crust and that sweet vanilla. That's that a la mode part. Ooh, I got ideas for this one. And then we have Graham Hatton, our Moulis ice cream. Oh my. Okay. Graham Hatton tastes like Golden Grahams meets Biscoff. And you can't tell that it's dairy-free. Now, do I know what kind of dairy-free it is? I don't, but wow. Wow. Oh. I don't know if I can give this bread away. I might have to keep it for myself. Okay, Graham Hatton. Please tell me this is not a seasonal flavor. This needs to be a forever flavor. Okay, so this one is chunky. This one does have a few chunks, but not as many. And it's a thinner ice cream. So we're going to need to do two completely different amounts of our ingredients of these. So here, what I want you to go get is flour, baking soda, and baking powder. And that's it. All right, so let's start out with our Graham Hatton. So mine is finally super melty. So what we're going to need to do is grab your baking powder and your baking soda. Remember, baking powder puffs, baking soda spreads, and they work as a happy little team together. So you're going to want 1 level teaspoon of baking powder and a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. That's the trick to this recipe. Is normally when people on TikTok were making this, they weren't adding baking soda and baking powder, and your bread was super dense. And they made it 2 cups of flour for regardless of what kind of bread or ice cream you used. So first we're going to start off with ½ cup of flour. Now, ½ cup is nowhere near enough, but we're going to go slow. We don't want to make it too thick and dense so that it doesn't turn into a good bread. All right, so I switched over to whisk just to make it easier. So now my ½ cup, I'm still rather runny. We're not looking for it to be super duper thick, but we don't want it to be super watery. So there is another ½ cup of flour. I always go by half cups and then I'll start adding tablespoons in. All right, so you kind of want to look for the consistency of banana or zucchini bread where it's still a little runny, so that way it stays super moist and not super dense. All right. That is looking good. We're going to add 2 tablespoons. There's 1 and there's 2. All right. So, oh, this is perfect. So my Graham Hatton is 1 cup and 2 tablespoons. So this is the consistency we're looking for. Almost like a... All right, so I'm going to use a non-stick spray, but I'm also going to put in my parchment liner that I made because it helps to just out the bread when it's all done instead of having to suffer through if it sticks to the edges to see if you made it, sprayed it down enough. I highly recommend always using parchment when making anything. It's one of my favorite inventions in the kitchen. All right, so we're going to pop this in our bread pan. Like so. Perfect consistency that we are looking for. Not runny, but not super duper thick. And I am a person that I get every ounce of it out of my bowl. Or at least I try to. Waste not, want not. All right, so we are just going to make sure it goes to all the edges. And then we are going to give it a little bit of a, so that it's even. And then we're going to pop this in the oven at 350 degrees. Now, Bailey, how long do I cook it for? Until a toothpick comes out almost clean. I will show you what I mean. Start out with 15 minutes. And then every 5 minutes after that, we'll test it. All right, let's pop this in. And let's move on to our apple pie a la mode. All right, so our apple pie a la mode. Now this one is a thinner ice cream. This one is a lot runnier than the Graham Hatton was. So this one will probably take a little bit more flour to use. So let me clean off my whisk here and switch out from my spatula. All right, so one final whisk just to make sure it is nice and melty, but you see this one is a lot runnier than the other one. All right, so we're gonna start off again. 1 teaspoon of baking powder and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. That's the only thing in these recipes that don't change. We want that spread and that puff. Remember, soda spreads, powder puffs. And they work perfectly together in a happy little marriage. All right, so we are gonna start out with 1 cup of flour this time. And we're gonna get a good little whisk on this. So the reason why it depends on the ice cream, on how much you use, is because of the sugar content and the ingredients that are in there. Now, you may have 2 pints of ice cream, but if a pint of ice cream has a lot of toppings in it, it's gonna change how much liquid is in there. To absorb that flour, essentially. So I'm still very liquidy. So I'm gonna start adding tablespoons. I'm gonna start out by adding 2 tablespoons. So there's my 2 tablespoons. And I'm still very liquidy. So meaning like I get really good ribbons. I don't want it to ribbon out. I want it to be a little bit pastier than that. So we're gonna add 2 more tablespoons. There's 1 and there's 2. Okay, so 2 more tablespoons. Oh, perfect. So this one, apple pie a la mode, took 1 cup and 4 tablespoons of flour. So again, my non-stick sprayed and parchment lined bread pan. I'm gonna need my spatula back again. All right, so let's get all of our batter into this pan. And again, 350 degrees, starting at 15 minutes, because every ice cream is gonna cook different based on the amount of sugar that's in there. I just splashed and got me right in the nose. The amount of sugar that's in there, the type of base, meaning milk or non-dairy base it is, how many different chunks are in there. It's all gonna change your cook time. Plus, where you're located, what's the temperature, what's the humidity, it all affects it. All right. Batter everywhere. Give it a little tamp up. And let's pop this in our oven. Be right back. All right, so both of our breads are in the oven. Now, they will not cook at the same time. Meaning they will not end at the same time. One may take longer, one may take shorter. Because again, every factor that you live in and that ice cream is going to affect it. So I live in Chicago, and right now it is extremely cold out and very dry out. So things tend to be cooking faster because there's not a ton of moisture in our air. And people that are, say, in Texas, there's going to be a lot more moisture in the air. Also, the ice creams are very, very different. One was a dairy-free ice cream and one wasn't. The apple pie a la mode had apples in it. Apples hold moisture. The other one had cookies and graham crackers in it. That's not going to hold moisture. They're going to become part of that ice cream and mush up. So always start with just 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of baking soda, and then a teaspoon of baking powder and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. And slowly add more flour, tablespoon by tablespoon, until you get that pasty-like batter where it's almost like a runnier frosting. You don't want it to be super thick. So the recipe that's out there says just add 2 cups of flour, mix it, pop it in your oven. It's too pasty, too dense. You want a light and fluffy cake or bread. That's where the baking soda and baking powder come in. So these are going to cook off. I will show you what I mean by when a toothpick comes out almost clean. So just wait a few minutes. It's TV. Remember, it goes fast for you guys. I'm the one that has to suffer and smell this cook. Can't wait to show you guys. See you in a few minutes. All right, so our Graham Hatton bread has been in here for about 15 minutes. So let's pull it out and do the toothpick test. So here I have my toothpick, and we're just going to stick it in the center. And it came out almost clean. It's hard to tell, but here at the end, I have, hang on. I have liquid on my finger. So it's not coming off as dry, but it is still batter. It is not cake-like or bread-like. So the bread is not quite ready yet. So that means somewhere in the middle, on the bottom, it still needs to cook more. So the reason why you go in the center and not the ends is because you want the part that's the furthest away from the edges, where the most batter is. So I'm going to give this 5 more minutes, and we'll come right back. All right, bakers, it's been another 5 minutes, so let's do our toothpick test on our Graham Hatton bread. Perfect. Teeny tiny little specks have come out on it, and that's what we want. If it comes out perfectly clean, it's overcooked. So that's why you want that almost clean, because it's going to be super moist and delicious. So now let's check our apple pie bread. This one, and I could tell by touching the top that it's still, my fingers leave an indent, so that means I don't think it's done yet. So let's just give it a little pick. Yep. And if you can tell, at the end of this, there is, here, I'll swirl it on my finger. It's still wet batter. Not ready. Pop it back in the oven. Okay, so our Graham Hatton bread is out. Now, here's a tip and trick. If you maintain your bread in your pan, the radiant heat from this pan is going to keep cooking your bread. Use that awesome parchment line. Pop your bread out. Put it on a cool counter so your bread stops cooking. We just need to wait a few more minutes, few more minutes, and our apple pie a la mode bread will be all done. And then we get to taste this. I'm so excited. All right, bakers, so our bread is nice and cooled, and it went late last night, so I wrapped it up, and we're going to try it today. So here we have it. Look at how gorgeous. Oh, look at this. Look at that. It looks so good. So let's cut into it and see how it's not dense. You can tell by the cut. Look, it's not dense. It's got a nice squish to it. Oh, this is our Graham Hatton. Look at that. Look at that. Look at the elasticity on that. Boom. This needs Nutella. Warmed up with butter. This is good. This is that Graham Hatton one. That baking soda and that baking powder is what's going to elevate this bread to not be so dense and chunky. Look at that. Look at that. That boing. That nice fluffiness. That's what you want in a bread. And now we have our apple pie a la mode ice cream bread. Again, light. It's got that nice boing to it where it's not super dense. Let's get this cut out. Oh, that smells good. Look at it. A nice boing, not super dense. Let's taste it. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, this would make a delicious French toast. Wow. That's good. You guys, ice cream bread at its finest. Add your baking soda. Add your baking powder. Slowly add your flour so you don't over-densify. Not sure that's a word. Make it too dense. We'll go with that. You don't make your bread too dense. You make it worth what it needs to be. Don't just add the 2 cups. Slowly add your flour. Make it perfect. And make it fun. And remember, not every ice cream is created equal. Some have more liquid in them. Some have less liquid in them. Some have more chunks in them. Just because it's a pint of ice cream, you need to be slow with your flour pours. It makes a difference. Thank you guys for joining me on another episode of Let's Get Our Bake On. And let's see what delicious things we turn out next.